Hey, welcome back to Dig Deeper. Thanks for listening. Today's Solocast is, as usual, just me thinking out loud about something I wrote recently that got a bit of traction. And I want to sit with the ideas in a different way. The article version of this is on my website, and I'll put a link in the show notes. But I reckon some things just land better when you hear them. So here we go. It's called Leadership is an Act of Attention. And I'm going to start with a bit of a confession. This morning, literally, I caught myself doing this thing that I tell other people not to do. I sat down at my desk, it was before 7, and I just wanted to clear some emails. You know the feeling, right? When it's first thing on a workday morning and you want to get some quick wins. You want to feel like you're moving. And so I worked through my inbox for about 90 minutes and I got heaps cleared and it felt really good. And then I looked at my notebook where I'd written down the thing I actually wanted to work on today. You know, that there's a piece of work that I've been meaning to get to all week, and I'd realised I'd burned the best of my morning on stuff that didn't really move the needle at all. Now, I'm not beating myself up about it, but I did think, there you go. That's the thing I keep seeing in the leaders I work with, and also clearly in myself. And I reckon it's one of the most common forms of leadership failure. And just to be clear, I don't mean dramatic failure. I'm not talking about catastrophic decisions or, a strategy that's a bit off. I mean more like the quiet sort of cumulative kind of failure. Because you might be making the right calls, you might have a great strategy, but your attention's pointing at the wrong things day after day until the months blur and the work you said mattered hasn't actually happened. And I think that's a hard thing to sit with, definitely for me, because the days feel full, the weeks feel busy, but, the progress may be not there like you'd like. And what's interesting that most of the advice we get about this, most productivity advice, tells that the answer is time management. Block your calendar, protect your mornings, single task. And I'm not dismissing those, but I think they're useful. But I think they're aimed at the wrong layer, and that's what I want to get into today. When I look at what it actually takes to make progress on what matters, I see 3 distinct practices. The first is time management. That's about the when, like when you do the work, how you structure your week, which hours you protect. The second is what I call attention management. That's about where you look, what you give your focus to. And the third practice is intention management. That's the deepest one. It's about the what for. It's about why you're doing this work in the first place, what you're actually trying to create. Here's the thing that I reckon most productivity advice gets backwards. The leverage runs in reverse order to how most of us invest our energy. Intention matters most. That's where the real leverage is, and yet it gets the least airtime in most leaders' weeks. Attention, it's like the daily craft. It's the thing you're actually practicing every day when you decide where to look. And time management, which is what we obsess over, is actually the lowest leverage of the 3. Because if your intention's clear, the time problem usually solves itself. And attention is the bridge between the two, between the why and the when. Does that make sense? I want to zoom in on that middle layer, attention, because I think that's where the real work is. So what I've noticed in both my own experience and in leaders I work with, most of the time, your attention isn't something you place, it's something that gets taken. Johann Hari wrote this great book, check it out, called Stolen Focus. I'll put a link in the notes. And the title, I reckon, nails it, Stolen Focus, because that's exactly what it is. Your attention gets stolen. Relentless notifications. By the way, I have my notifications off on my phone in case you're ever trying to get hold of me. Just know that. Those notifications are distracting. The open loops in my head, they do my head in. Things that just are still hanging around and they're taking up space in your brain, those open loops. Or the next urgent thing that arrives before you've even finished the current one. They all drive to where you look next before you've had a chance to think about whether that's actually where you want to look. And what I notice, and I see this in lots of senior leaders, is that people arrive at the end of a very full day and they feel like they've been on the whole time, on the stage. And they have. They've been on something all day. But when you ask them how much of their attention was deliberately placed versus kind of captured by whatever arrived, the ratio is often pretty uncomfortable. Attention management, right? Real attention management, I reckon, is the discipline of choosing on purpose, which is genuinely hard work, especially when you're operating in an environment that's actually built more to choose for you. I think there's a layer underneath all of this, which I don't think we talk about enough, which is that you can't choose well if you're always on. I think we've normalised something in leadership culture that's worth having a look at. The expectation is often unspoken, but it's definitely real, is that you're present and sharp around the clock, on the stage essentially the whole time. Available, responsive, switched on. I was talking to a managing director the other day, and he was reflecting on that he has, his policy of always available, just drop into my office at any time. And he's starting to regret it because he doesn't get the thinking time. People are just lined up outside his door. And I think what we need is the skill of discernment, the kind of clear, grounded attention that leads to really good decisions and real leadership. We need discernment. Rather than having more stage time, we need sanctuary time. That's the time you make to reflect, to think, to notice what the noise is drowning out. Time when you're off stage. And what I find in the leaders I work with who manage their attention really well, and these are people who are doing ambitious, substantive work without burning out, is they guard their time fiercely. They protect it and they treat it as non-negotiable. But it's got to be said, a lot of them also feel somewhere underneath that this kind of quiet sense that they're getting away with something, like they should be more available, more responsive, like being still's somehow not quite right. How does that sit with you, that idea? I think it points to something that's important. We've been trained to believe that being a leader is being on the job, that responsiveness equals professionalism. And so going off the stage, protecting the quiet time, the thinking time, it can feel indulgent, even when intellectually we know it's not. The leaders I most respect, they've worked through that. They get that time and they guard it without the guilt. I just want to bring in something else that I think makes this all more urgent, not less. AI. AI is absorbing data, information, and knowledge processing at pace. So whatever you think about what that means for the future of work, and there's heaps to think about there, the technical scaffolding of most knowledge work is being absorbed. That's just true. And what stays distinctly human, I think, in that world is wisdom. The capacity to slow down, to discern signal from noise, to notice what actually matters, to make judgments that require experience, tacit knowledge, context, relationships, moral weight, things that AI, at least as it stands now, simply doesn't have. And what I'm saying is that attention management is the practice that underlies all of that. Without the ability to place your attention deliberately, you can't really build wisdom. You can't discern. And you end up trying to just get through stuff faster, which is exactly what AI can already do better than any of us. So I don't think the attention question is just a productivity question. I reckon it's a question about what kind of leader do you want to be in the next decade? I want to leave you just with a couple of questions, and I'd really love you to sit with these rather than just move past them. First one, when you look at where your attention actually went last week, not where you planned it to go, but where it actually went, how close did that match what you say matters to you? Just take a moment with that one, because I reckon there's a real gap there, and that gap is worth knowing about and being aware of, because when we have awareness, we have choice about what to do next. Second question, if attention's your scarcest resource as a leader, what would you stop doing? And what would you start? I reckon you already know the answers. The harder thing is acting on them. So here's my suggestion. Tomorrow morning, before you open your inbox, just take 5 minutes and write down the one thing that actually matters today. The thing that if you moved it forward would mean the day was worth it. And then go and do that one first. Just that one thing. Do it first. Okay, so the article version of this is up on my website. I'll put the link in the show notes. And if any of what I've talked about today resonates with you, either for you or for your team, feel free just to reach out and I'll put a link to how to get hold of me in the show notes too. Thanks for listening with me today on this, I think, really important idea of leadership as an act of attention. This is Dig Deeper. I'm Digby Scott. Until next time, go well.